I am really excited to be with you all tonight. We have a very busy 2 hours ahead of us tonight. So let's get started. Today, I'm going to do something a little bit different, and that I'm going to use a platform called Nearpod for most of our presentation today. So this uh, platform called Nearpod is free software that you can use with your own students. So instead of just using a regular old PowerPoint tonight, I thought I would share with you a tech tool that I have found to be very useful for my classes. So tonight's presentation is about thinking critically about critical thinking. And if you're not familiar with this little bear, his name is Pooh, and he is the star of the series of books called Winnie the Pooh. And I read these books to my children. I read them as a child. They're very, very sweet books that have lessons in them about being good friends to people and cherishing your family and friends. So if you haven't read these books, they're charming. Even though we're all adults, I still read them occasionally because they just make me happy. And right now, we're kind of living in crazy times. So a little happiness is always nice to have. So, anyway, here's little Pooh Bear, and he's going, think, 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 think. And I wish critical thinking was as easy as that you could just hit your head and go, think, 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 think. But it doesn't work that way. Critical thinking is something that you really have to study and you have to really think about when you are designing your lessons. Because I personally think it's very important that we help our students learn how to think critically. So, what we're going to do tonight, or this morning, I should say, I'm going to very quickly review webinar 2 on our grammar and vocabulary. We're going to define critical thinking, discuss why it's important to teach critical thinking, look at some critical thinking resources. We'll practice 3 critical thinking activities, and then we'll reflect on critical thinking in our Tech for Teaching platform. So let me go ahead and show you kind of what we did last month. We were talking about teaching vocabulary and grammar, and we talked a lot about the benefits of using active learning and games in the classroom. We talked about the 5 rules of learning, which is to use scaffolding, learn by doing, creating stimulating experiences. We talked about how if you don't use it, you lose it. And remember the emotions that are tied up in language learning and in learning in general. A month ago, we practiced 5 different grammar and vocabulary games, and we discussed some extension activities all together. So as colleagues, we all kind of brainstorm some ways that we might use these games or extend these games in our own classroom. And then finally, we looked at the Moodle for the upcoming homework. So to remind you, we've had 2 webinars. The first one was on the 4 skills. And for that webinar, I had some supplementary tasks for you to complete. One of them was to introduce yourself. And most of you have done that. If you haven't, it's okay. I still love you. I'm hoping, though, that you will have a chance to go into that webinar 1 and go ahead and introduce yourself by telling us 6 words that describe you, showing 3 pictures that kind of give us an idea of who you are and what you think is important, and then maybe tell us in a few sentences about your teaching situation. So that was the discussion topic for webinar 1. Also, for webinar 1, you were put into groups, and I have 9 groups, and I asked you to come up with a lesson plan. And I know this was, you can do it student paced. You can do it in the front of the class where maybe your students don't have devices, as long as you have an internet connection. And what I also like is that there's all these pre-made lessons and videos that you are welcome to use. So check out this software. In fact, that's one of the tasks I'm asking you to do for this week, or for this month, I should say. It's just to take a peek at this. But that is the first slide in our Nearpod. Our next slide is a poll. And this is what it looks like from the teacher's view, but I am going to show you the student view And the student view, so if you are participating in Nearpod right now, you will see, it always takes a minute to go from teacher view to student view, but you will see a question and you will see 5 answers. If you are not in the Nearpod and you want to put your answer in the chat box, I will check that too. But the question says, how often do you incorporate critical thinking skills into your lessons? So I'll give you a chance to look at those options. And of course, a poll is something you can also do in Zoom, but Nearpod has the capacity to make polls too. I can't actually participate in this because I'm running as a teacher, but I will go ahead and put my answer in here and submit it. So let me give you a second to answer those questions. And then what I will do is show you the teacher view where you can see what everybody said. So again, if you're joining us late, welcome to the webinar. We are trying some new software tonight. It's called Nearpod. So if you go to nearpod.com, nearpod.com, and I will go back and show you that code again. But let me go ahead and switch to the teacher view, and we will close down this poll. And look at all those people. Oh, somebody's polar bear. I love it. So here we have our student names, and we have some people that said A, some people that said B, C, and I can see that these are the student results. I can click over here and hide the students' names if I want to keep that anonymous, or I can show them. We're all teachers. I think we're fine with that. I'm going to share the poll with everybody. So if you are at home if you are in Nearpod, you're going to see these percentages. And it says that 37.5% of people try to incorporate critical thinking skills into each lesson. We have 25 who said occasionally, 25% who said I usually. We have 8.3 who didn't answer. And 4.2 who said, I haven't really thought about it. And then we have 0 people that said, it's important, but I have other priorities. So we're kind of getting an idea that people seem to try to incorporate critical thinking skills into their lessons. Bravo. Okay, let me come back up here and go back to the student view so that you can see that from the student view. And again, with my students, I don't switch back and forth, but I'm doing that for you as teachers because I think you might be interested in how this works from the student's view. So if you are not in Nearpod, this is what it looks like from the student view. Okay, let me go back. What I want to do next is tell you a little bit more about what we're going to be doing in our Nearpod tonight. I'm going to ask you to define critical thinking, discuss why it's important to teach critical thinking. I'm going to show you 3 resources that I use to teach critical thinking, and then we'll practice some activities. So let's try to fill out our fill in the blanks. So the student view, I am giving you all a definition of critical thinking, and it's from a website called www.criticalthinking.org. And I love this website. We're going to look at it in a few minutes. What I don't like about Nearpod is that when you create fill in the blanks, it makes the letters very tiny. I wish I could make these the font larger. So you may have to get up really close to your computer or your phone to actually see this. But the way you play this game is that you take the words at the bottom and you slide them up into the blank spots. And you choose which words you want to black out. So this fill in the blanks activity, I think really makes students look at sentences closely. So I know that when I'm doing vocabulary that I could just give them a definition, or if we're reading a paragraph, we could just read the paragraph. But I think it's a little more active for students to try to have to figure out the meaning on their own. And this is actually a critical thinking activity, is trying to figure out the information. So what you do at home, what you do in Nearpod is that you look at these 5 boxes and pull up the words. So if you're at home, if you're not in Nearpod, you can, on a piece of paper, if you want to write down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then try to figure out what number 1 is. And the way you do that in Nearpod is you take the word and you slide it up there and you put it in there. So let me give you a moment and I will look in the chat box to see if anybody wants to put their answers. But we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So go to it. Let me give you a minute to do that. I see somebody said, Hong said done. Yay. Very speedy. Well, let's go ahead and look at the answers. I'm going to go back to the teacher mode and we will see how people did. These are the results and it shows, like, it doesn't look like everybody's quite completed. So maybe I didn't give you quite enough time, but it tells you there's 5 answers and how many you after this webinar. I'm going to give you a code that is good for 30 days so you can go in and experience this Nearpod by yourself. So if you want to just watch tonight, that's fine. I'm hoping there will be a few people that participate so that I can show you how it actually works. What we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click on that live participation and it's going to give me a code. So the code that it's going to give me is a 5-digit code, and it is GU2KN. So if you go to nearpod.com, it says here join at nearpod.com, but you don't have to do that. You can do just nearpod.com. And then you enter in where it says student, join a class, student code, GU2KN. So I'm going to do that on my iPad here real quick so I can make sure that everything is working. So I'm going to, if you can see on my screen here, there's an orange box and it says students, join a lesson. So I'm going to type in, and it doesn't matter if it's lowercase or uppercase, it will accept it either way. And if you are coming in late to this webinar, we're trying out some new software tonight. Once you enter the code, it asks for your name. So if you want to be anonymous, you can give any name you want in the world. If you want to be Beyonce, you could put that in there. If you want to be, maybe I'm going to be I'm going to be Pooh Bear. Okay, and then you will be taken to the opening slide. So I'm going to go ahead and get started in this. What's kind of nice about this is that when you're in here, that code is up here. So if you missed the code, if you didn't get it in time, it's always up here in the upper left-hand corner. So that's GU2KN. And it looks like we have... let me see if I can go down a little bit to see how many people we have in here. It looks like we have some participants already. Let me give you, I have 14 people here if we want to wait just another minute. So this is the same Pooh Bear that you saw in the PowerPoint. He's going think, 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 think. And what I'm going to have you all do is go ahead and get started. We have 17 people. Again, you can still join if you want, if you go to nearpod.com. I'm going to hide the student names so we don't see your name in case you want to remain anonymous. And if you want to put in a funny name, that's fine too. But this is the Nearpod software, and I'm going to go ahead and get started. So I wanted to show you that the Nearpod software itself is very easy. You can make class lessons interactive. Honestly, this took me about 15 minutes to figure out how to do. And look at me, I'm an old lady. If it takes me only 15 minutes, it probably will take you guys 5 minutes. But anyway, this is the website. What I like about the website is that it has lots of tutorials on it. So there are, you can do it live like we're doing right now. You can do it student paced. You can do it in the front of the class where maybe your students don't have devices, as long as you have an internet connection. And what I also like is that there's all these pre-made lessons and videos that you are welcome to use. So check out this software. In fact, that's one of the tasks I'm asking you to do for this week, or for this month, I should say. It's just to take a peek at this. But that is the first slide in our Nearpod. Our next slide is a poll. And this is what it looks like from the teacher's view, but I am going to show you the student view. And the student view, so if you are participating in Nearpod right now, you will see, it always takes a minute to go from teacher view to student view, but you will see a question and you will see 5 answers. If you are not in the Nearpod and you want to put your answer in the chat box, I will check that too. But the question says, how often do you incorporate critical thinking skills into your lessons? So I'll give you a chance to look at those options. And of course, a poll is something you can also do in Zoom, but Nearpod has the capacity to make polls too. I can't actually participate in this because I'm running as a teacher, but I will go ahead and put my answer in here and submit it. So let me give you a second to answer those questions. And then what I will do is show you the teacher view where you can see what everybody said. So again, if you're joining us late, welcome to the webinar. We are trying some new software tonight. It's called Nearpod. So if you go to nearpod.com, nearpod.com, and I will go back and show you that code again. But let me go ahead and switch to the teacher view, and we will close down this poll. And look at all those people. Oh, somebody's polar bear. I love it. So here we have our student names, and we have some people that said A, some people that said B, C, and I can see that these are the student results. I can click over here and hide the students' names if I want to keep that anonymous, or I can show them. We're all teachers. I think we're fine with that. I'm going to share the poll with everybody. So if you are at home if you are in Nearpod, you're going to see these percentages. And it says that 37.5% of people try to incorporate critical thinking skills into each lesson. We have 25 who said occasionally, 25% who said I usually. We have 8.3 who didn't answer. And 4.2 who said, I haven't really thought about it. And then we have 0 people that said, it's important, but I have other priorities. So we're kind of getting an idea that people seem to try to incorporate critical thinking skills into their lessons. Bravo. Okay, let me come back up here and go back to the student view so that you can see that from the student view. And again, with my students, I don't switch back and forth, but I'm doing that for you as teachers because I think you might be interested in how this works from the student's view. So if you are not in Nearpod, this is what it looks like from the student view. Okay, let me go back. What I want to do next is tell you a little bit more about what we're going to be doing in our Nearpod tonight. I'm going to ask you to define critical thinking. discuss why it's important to teach critical thinking. I'm going to show you 3 resources that I use to teach critical thinking, and then we'll practice some activities. So let's try to fill out our fill in the blanks. So the student view, I am giving you all a definition of critical thinking, and it's from a website called www.criticalthinking.org. And I love this website. We're going to look at it in a few minutes. What I don't like about Nearpod is that when you create fill in the blanks, it makes the letters very tiny. I wish I could make these the font larger. So you may have to get up really close to your computer or your phone to actually see this. But the way you play this game is that you take the words at the bottom and you slide them up into the blank spots. And you choose which words you want to black out. So this fill in the blanks activity, I think really makes students look at sentences closely. So I know that when I'm doing vocabulary that I could just give them a definition, or if we're reading a paragraph, we could just read the paragraph. But I think it's a little more active for students to try to have to figure out the meaning on their own. And this is actually a critical thinking activity, is trying to figure out the information. So what you do at home, what you do in Nearpod is that you look at these 5 boxes and pull up the words. So if you're at home, if you're not in Nearpod, you can, on a piece of paper, if you want to write down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then try to figure out what number 1 is. And the way you do that in Nearpod is you take the word and you slide it up there and you put it in there. So let me give you a moment and I will look in the chat box to see if anybody wants to put their answers. But we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So go to it. Let me give you a minute to do that. I see somebody said, Hong said done. Yay. Very speedy. Well, let's go ahead and look at the answers. I'm going to go back to the teacher mode and we will see how people did. These are the results and it shows, like, it doesn't look like everybody's quite completed. So maybe I didn't give you quite enough time, but it tells you there's 5 answers and how many you got right. And sometimes it shows you how many tries that you've done. But let's go ahead and view the answers. So here is our definition. It reads, critical thinking is the intellectually disciplined process of actively and skillfully conceptualizing, applying, analyzing, synthesizing, and or evaluating information gathered from or generated by observation, experience, reflection, reasoning, or communication as a guide to belief and action. Now that is a heavy definition. That's a very complex definition for critical thinking. But what I like about this definition is that it kind of includes everything that I know about critical thinking all in one really, really long sentence. So you'll notice I took out the nouns or some of the nouns and asked you to try to figure out what the answer was. Okay, my friends, let's keep moving along. That definition that I just read has a lot of the same ideas that we see in Bloom's taxonomy chart. And I know you've all looked at this before, but we are talking about evaluating, reflecting, and applying, supporting, so all kinds of the words that were in that definition are also represented here on Bloom's taxonomy. What I want to do now is to give you a chance to think about why we should teach critical thinking. And just like Padlet, we have a board here where you can put in your ideas and post them to the board. You can also post images to the board if you wish. So let me give you a few moments. And for those of you not in Nearpod, if you want to add your ideas to the chat box, you can. We only have 31 people in the Nearpod, so there's room for 9 more people if 9 more of you want to join. It's at nearpod.com, and here's the code. It's GU2KN. So as soon as you have an idea, you type your idea in for why we should teach critical thinking skills. Why is it our responsibility as teachers? What are some reasons for why we should do that? Let me give you, oh, I see somebody's put something up, help students know there. And critical thinking is necessary in modern life. Yes. And then as the teacher, I can put little hearts on there and say, I love your answer. And you can ask students, if you've put if there's 20 ideas up here on the board, you can ask students, please unlike the 3 best. So you can turn this activity into a critical thinking activity because students will be evaluating each other's answers. It makes people independent, love it. Students will have a deep understanding about the contents exactly to help students develop their higher order thinking skills. Boom, boom, look at all this. Woo, we got some action going tonight. Students have to learn a lot, so they need to select what is important and what is not. Could not agree with that more. Help students think clearly and rationally. To prepare for students, guitar, and maybe that was supposed to be career. To evaluate students, help students explain and understand deeper. If we teach children to think critically, their knowledge is limitless. I love it. Students will be prepared to solve the problems in the future. Besides, students will have a chance to be creative. Ooh la la, I love that creative was used in there. To assist students to improve their 21st century skills. Wow, I can't believe you said that because that's one of the things on my list. Excellent. Can help students, we have a mind meld going tonight. Can help students evaluate themselves. Beautiful. Critical thinking teaches students how to be their own person, not to take everything they read on the internet at face value. Oh, don't we need to teach media literacy? Thank you for bringing that up. Students can become critical thinking people. I think we need more critical thinkers in our societies. Thinking critically is a way of creating new things to prepare for students' future, help students remember, analyze, create, help students enhance creativity, help students remember things more deeply and can apply their knowledge into reality, to help students practice giving opinions. Yes, 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 yes. Help them to give right questions and understand themselves. Lovely, 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 lovely. Help students make their thinking work effectively, help students to be more actively involved in learning. Critical thinking encourages students to be independent and helps them to succeed in schoolwork and in their daily life. Wow, I'm blown away. What excellent, excellent answers. Let me see if we have some ideas in our chat box as well, because I know not everybody's in the Nearpod. This platform is very interesting. I'm falling in love with it. Me too. I have a mad love affair with Nearpod. I love my husband, but Nearpod, whew, I love Nearpod. Solve problems systematically and reflect on the justification of their own beliefs and values. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Okay, thank you. So again, this is just a way for you to have your students post their ideas. Again, you can ask them to each choose which ones they like the best and explore and go from there. Okay, thank you. Thank you for participating in that. I wanted to give you some ideas that I had, not that my ideas are any better than yours, but just ideas that I was thinking about. One of them is that your Ministry of Education in 2017 said there is a need to teach higher order thinking competencies. I know I try to keep my boss happy. So I'm sure that you all are trying to keep your bosses happy too. So teaching critical thinking skills is actually something the government of Vietnam wants. So I think that helps give proof for why we should be teaching these skills in our classes. Somebody mentioned they are a much needed 21st century skill for the workforce. I teach workforce education, so I teach people who are trying to get jobs in America, and I know that employers here really value people who can problem solve, and they don't need somebody to hold their hand all the time, that they can figure things out on their own using some of these critical thinking skills that they should, I think, possess. We know that ESL and EFL theory supports teaching critical thinking skills as part of language acquisition. And we know that using critical thinking skills helps the world be a more reasonable place. Honestly, if we could get all of the world leaders into a room and go over this critical thinking skills, wouldn't this world be a better place? That's Amy. thinking that that would help. Anyway, these are just 4 reasons. The reasons that you put on the Collaborate board were spot on. So thank you for contributing. The 21st century time, what people are selecting over here, we still have 50% of people have not answered. It creates this kind of nifty little pie chart, which I think is kind of neat. When I'm teaching critical thinking skills, somebody had mentioned, like, don't believe everything you read on the internet, is to look at the source. So the source of this video, I think, is important because they're telling us 5 tips for critical thinking skills, or for teaching. We don't want some crazy person off the street that's telling us this. We want to make sure that this is a legitimate source. And if you were here from the beginning, I did tell you that this is a TED Ed course. So this is actually correct. And up here we can see 63% correct. So this was produced by TED Ed. It is this, and they have a very rigorous process for uploading videos on their website. They're very, very choosy. So I think we can agree that this is a legitimate video. Okay, let me go ahead and continue. And I always think it's kind of nice for teachers to see how people are answering, to see if the majority of the people are getting it. I did mention the bias and manipulation of the media, but overall, I think we would agree that this video is about improving your critical thinking skills because it said it's going to give us 5 tips for how to do that. Let me continue.
1. Formulate your question. In other words, know what you're looking for. This isn't always as straightforward as it sounds. For example, if you're deciding whether to try out the newest diet craze, your reasons for doing so may be obscured by other factors, like claims that you'll see results in just 2 weeks. But if you approach the situation with a clear view of what you're actually trying to accomplish by dieting, whether that's weight loss, better nutrition, or having more energy, that'll equip you to sift through this information critically, find what you're looking for, and decide whether the new fad really suits your needs. 2. Gather your information. There's lots of it out there, so having a clear idea of your question will help you determine what's relevant. If you're trying to decide on a diet to improve your nutrition, you may ask an expert for their advice or seek other people's testimonies. Information gathering helps you weigh different options, moving you closer to a decision that meets your goal.
Okay, so we have another question here, and it says, why did the narrator suggest that the woman in the video go see a doctor about her diet? And this is a little bit tricky because there's 2 answers that aren't bad. And honestly, maybe I didn't make the best question. The correct answer was that we just saw that example of going to the doctor to use to gather more information. So that is actually the correct answer. But you could also say to explore other points of view and to consider the implications too. Okay, my friends, let's continue on. We have about a minute left.
3. Apply the information. Something you do by asking critical questions. Facing a decision, ask yourself, what concepts are at work? What assumptions exist? Is my interpretation of the information logically sound? For example, in an email that promises you millions, you should consider, what is shaping my approach to this situation? Do I assume the sender is telling the truth? Based on the evidence, is it logical to assume I'll win any money? 4. Consider the implications. Imagine it's election time, and you've selected a political candidate based on their promise to make it cheaper for drivers to fill up on gas. At first glance, that seems great, but what about the long-term environmental effects? If gasoline use is less restricted by cost, this could also cause a huge surge in air pollution, an unintended consequence that's important to think about.
Okay, so considering the implications of a decision means, and you have a choice of 4 answers there. So maybe once you come to a decision, what do you need to do after that? After you come to the decision, what are the implications? And it looks like most people are getting the correct answer there, which is answer A, examining potential outcomes and effects. Okay, I'm going to keep moving along here. You will have a chance.
5. Explore other
Pause
points.
that for just a second. You will have a chance to do this Nearpod on your own. So after the webinar, I'm going to give you a code where you can go in and do this at your own pace. So I know I'm moving quickly through it tonight, but you will have this chance to do it by yourself.
Points of view. Ask yourself why so many people are drawn to the policies of the opposing political candidate. Even if you disagree with everything that candidate says, exploring the full spectrum of viewpoints might explain why some policies that don't seem valid to you appeal to others. This will allow you to explore alternatives, evaluate your own choices, and ultimately help you make more informed decisions. This 5-step process is just one tool, and it certainly won't eradicate difficult decisions from our lives, but it can help us increase the number of positive choices we make. Critical thinking can give us the tools to sift through a sea of information and find what we're looking for. And if enough of us use it, it has the power to make the world a more reasonable place.
And then we have this last question that says, so what? What does a presenter think will happen if more people use critical thinking skills? And this is a chance where you actually can type in your answers. And you may have missed it, but the narrator said that right at the very end of the presentation. They said this using critical thinking skills will make the world. And let's see if anybody is going to put in an answer there. And I can hide the student names. If we don't want to see student names, we can keep this anonymous. I will see if people in the Nearpod want to put in an answer. I just kind of like the very last message that was put on there. I see there's one answer. They will make informed decisions. Exactly. I'm going to share that with the class. It will make for a better world. Exactly. He did say that at the very end. I'll make it a more reasonable place. The world would be more reasonable. Whoop, whoop. That's what the narrator said at the end. Although I certainly agree with the other ones. It will be better for the world. I don't know if those are sharing or not. Okay. So again, I just wanted to kind of show you this video. It's very sophisticated, so it wouldn't be for younger learners, but I think higher level learners, especially if you had the transcripts and you did some maybe close activities with it before you ever watched it and stopped it and talked about each one of those 5 tips, that this could be a tool that you use in your classrooms. I know I use it, and I have the students write down the 5 tips, and then we talk about it later, so they're kind of listening for a purpose. Okay, thank you for participating in that TED Ed. What you're going to be doing for homework or supplementary activity is I'm sending you to a website on TED Ed where there are already multiple choice questions created. So I wanted to show you that how easy it is to use TED Ed, that you can actually take a lesson that's already been produced and change it, modify it if you want to, and use it in your own classrooms without having to reinvent the wheel. So I'm hoping that you all have a chance to use this resource number 1, which is TED Ed. Okay, thank you for that participation. I thought we would do another activity very quickly because we talked about how important images are. And I was so excited to see in your lesson plans how many of you used images to show the legend of the origin of Vietnam. So I thought that was really neat that we're on the same playing field here, that we all seem to like images. So another game that you can play in Nearpod, and something that I think many of you do in your classes already, when you bring in images and people have to match the image to the word or to a sentence. And that's what we're going to try right now. So let me go ahead and put this in student view. And I want you to kind of think creatively and use your imagination and see if you can match these 5 tips that we just saw in TED Ed to the picture, to the image. So the directions say, let's see if you can match the image with the 5 tips for teaching critical thinking. If you're correct, you will see your selection turn green. So these are what the people in Nearpod are seeing, and they have to click on a box and click on the image that represents the box. So to do that, I'll just give you a quick demonstration here. Formulate a question, and here, isn't this man formulating a question? So I'm going to click here, and if I get it right, it turns green. So now those 2 options are out. So what you need to do in Nearpod is finish the rest of those. And if you are not in Nearpod, maybe you can just kind of do this mentally. You know, what do you think this picture represents here? Which of these 4 tips that are left over? And I'm going to check the chat box while you are doing that activity. Oh, good. I see that people put some answers. BDD, they will make a reasonable place. Excellent. Okay. Thank you for participating in the chat room, by the way. Okay, let me give you about 1 more minute to see if you can figure this out. And again, maybe my images are not the best images, but there's something that you could talk to your students about as part of your lesson. So I'm going to go back to the teacher view, and we can see from the list of students here how many tries. So 5 out of 5. You got all 5 right. Other people are not quite done. But if you did the 5 out of 5 matches, this tells me how many tries you did. And honestly, this is a new activity, so maybe you didn't quite understand how to do it to start with. But we can see that there's people getting all 5 of them. Excellent, excellent. Let me give you about 30 more seconds. So again, as a teacher, you can look and see how your students are responding. It's kind of an informal assessment here to see if that's what was being told is being understood. So I'm going to go ahead and view the pairs now. If you didn't finish it, it's okay. After this webinar, you can go in there and do this on your own, and everybody can go. When you have it student-paced, there's an unlimited number of people that can view it, and you can view it more than once. So if you start and then you get hungry and want to go have dinner, come back and start it again, no problem. But let me view the pairs here. We had formulate a question, and to me, this picture kind of represents that. Gather information. And I was trying to show that you can get information from books, from the computer, from other people as a way to gather the information. Apply the information, maybe talk about it with somebody. So maybe something is crazy in your head, but you apply it and it really makes sense. You start to get like a clearer picture of whatever issue it is that you're looking at. This is one of my favorite images in the world to teach points of view. And I know it's really itty bitty, but what it is are 2 people, and they're both looking at the same object. And this fellow over here on the left says 6. And this fellow over here on the right says 9. And they're both right? So sometimes I think we don't consider other points of views because we're so determined that ours is the right one, when in fact, both of these men are right. It's just your way of looking at something. And then finally, considering the implications, and this goes back to that idea of thinking about alternatives and what could happen. So choices and consequences, trying to kind of balance things out. So We've talked about critical thinking, about how you can get students to make connections. And sometimes I think you can blah, 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 talk, 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 talk. But images can really help students kind of understand and have the information sink into their heads better. Okay, thank you for participating in that activity. The next thing, we're going to kind of switch gears here. I showed you a video with 5 tips for critical thinking. There is this website that just blows me away. It's criticalthinking.org. It is a website where you have to register if you want to explore some of the activities. And I'm always kind of leery about registering at websites, so I just use the free part where you don't have to sign up for it. I don't know anybody who's ever really paid for anything or gotten into the website and looked at it more, but that is certainly an option that you could explore. And I'm not even sure you have to pay, and maybe you just have to give them your email, which I'm always kind of nervous about. But let me go ahead and show you this website, because what it has is this really cool wheel of reason. And it tells you when you're thinking that you should consider these 8 different elements. So I'm going to go to the website here. And if I click on this, it's going to send me down at the bottom here to the wheel of reason. And all of this stuff, like activities, if you click on these, it says you have to log in. So I just come down here and look at this, because when I'm designing lessons, especially for my higher level students, this helps me frame the lesson. So you think about the purpose, and if you click on this wheel, it's interactive. So here, if you click on purpose, over here it comes over and says, all reasoning has a purpose. And then it gives you ideas of what that means. And then here it says, think about purpose. Your purpose is your goal, your objective, what you're trying to accomplish. And then what I love best about this wheel is it gives us questions. So if I'm designing an activity, I can come here and actually get some questions that have already been written by people that I think are much smarter than I am, who came up with these very clever questions to drive and design the critical thinking. So what's neat about this is each one of these elements has got the definition, and it gives you questions to target. And so I hope that you have a chance to look at this website. Again, this is part of your homework, is to come take a few minutes to look at this. You don't have to do anything with it. I just wanted you to spend, 10 or 15 minutes exploring this beautiful wheel of reason. We were talking about implications and consequences. Over here, it gives you some questions about what you can ask about implications. We mentioned point of view. Here we are questions to check your point of view. So maybe that you can understand that it is both a 6 and a 9. Another really neat thing about this wheel is up here we have use the elements with sensitivity to intellectual standards. So if you click on these 8 standards, it gives you other things to think about when you are critically analyzing a situation or a problem. So again, I think this is just a terrific resource. I hope that you have a chance to look at it because I think it could really help guide you in designing some of your activities that you do with your students. But let me go back and do something that's a little bit more fun for us. I love hats. I have always had curly, frizzy hair. So as a little kid, when I was a child, I cut all of my hair off because I thought it would grow back long and straight and luxurious, but it didn't. It grew back curly. So as a little kid, I always wore hats to try to hide my hair because I wanted to look like everybody else. Not very many people have curly hair unless it's a perm. There's some people, but most of my friends all had beautiful straight hair. Anyway, so I love hats. And there is an expression or an idiom in English that says, let's put on our thinking caps. And I'm sure most of you are familiar with this idiom, and it means let's think about something carefully. So if you tell your students, put on your thinking caps, you're asking them to think carefully about something. The next resource that I show you is all about wearing hats. But before I tell you about this resource, just for fun, because we need a little fun in our lives, let's look at an activity that is similar to the one we did before, where you're matching things. What I have here are, it's changing to the student view, I have some idioms that are represented by pictures. And what I want you to try to do is that I want you to think of what the idiom is, and it's not here. These words are not the idiom. These words are what the idiom means. And then try to match it to the definition. So this is tricky. What this cat is doing is he is dropping his hat. So if you drop your hat, so if you say, I would do that at the drop of my hat, it means you would do it immediately without waiting or planning. So that, I'm giving you a freebie there. So that one, at the drop of a hat, I will go have ice cream tonight. Or at the drop of a hat, I will go with you to your house. So let me give you a moment. Again, if you are not in Nearpod, you can just try to see if you can figure this out on your own. So this is very tricky because this is not the idiom, it's a picture of the idiom. So let me give you a couple of minutes to try that. Okay, we'll check the chat box while we're waiting. This is pretty tricky. Maybe I'll do one more with you. So, do you see how this man has a cake under his hat and he's putting the hat on? So, what this represents to me is to keep something under your hat. If you keep something under your hat, you keep it secret. So there's another answer for you. Let me go ahead and go back to our students that are in Nearpod. Look good, people are finishing up, excellent. Wow, looks like we've got some good results there. Beautiful. Let me go ahead and show you the pairs. So this is at the drop of a hat, which means immediately without waiting or planning. To keep something under your hat is to keep something secret. If you say, oh, I wear many hats, it means you have multiple responsibilities or roles. If you throw your hat in the ring, it means you are entering an election or a contest. If you take off your hat, it means you admire someone or respect someone. And if you put on your thinking cap, it means to start thinking carefully. So I appreciate that you all did that. Again, these hat idioms: to keep something under your hat, at the drop of a hat, throw one's hat in the ring, to take one's hat off to put on your thinking cap, and to wear many hats. So I love hats. What I want to show you next is another activity that I use almost every term with my students, and I've used it with intermediate students and advanced students. I haven't tried it with my beginning students, but the intermediate and advanced students respond really well to it, and I think it's something that you could do with younger level students. And what it's called is 6-hat thinking. So I'm going to stop the share for a moment so that I can show you how to make a newspaper hat if you don't know. So I'm going to stop my share and I am going to show you my newspaper here. I am going to fold my newspaper in half. And then I'm going to fold 2 corners down. I'm going to make sure that the open part is at the bottom. So here's the open part at the bottom. I'm going to fold these down in the middle like this. So it looks like this. And then I'm going to flip my corners up and fold them down. So here's one corner that's flipped up, and I'm going to flip the other one up. And so now I have a newspaper hat, and the directions are in the Nearpod, and you can put it on, and this can be my newspaper hat. Yay, I see someone else made one, yay. Okay, so what we're gonna do here for this newspaper hat is my students all make a hat, and they all feel kind of ridiculous in the classroom because we're all wearing a newspaper hat. But what we're doing is a technique, excuse me, that was invented by a fellow named Edward de Bono. Clear back, I'm sorry, I'm gonna take a quick drink of tea. Whew, okay, this fellow Edward de Bono came up with this 6 thinking hat for people to approach problems. And his theory was that when you put people in a group and you give them a task or a problem to solve, that people are all over the place. And his theory is the best if people try to think laterally, or if they try to all think together using a different viewpoint. So he came up with this 6 hat thinking. And what I do is bring in strips of paper, and I have the students staple them because I'm lazy and I don't want to make these for all of my students. So I have them do that in class. We just pass around a stapler. So we have 6 colors here because the 6 hat thinking involves 6 colors. The blue color represents the process. So everyone puts on their blue process, and then I tell my students, guess what? I'm the teacher. I'm the one who's going to do the process for this. But at home, you can do this with your family, and you can be the one that tells us the process. So the blue hat is the person that does the process. The white hat is the person, or is the way of thinking logically. So I tell everybody, put on your white hat. We're all going to think logically about a problem. So we're going to only use facts and figures, statistics that we can prove. After people have come up with their white hat thinking, I say, okay, let's their emotions out. And we put on our red hats, and everybody puts on their red ring, and everybody in their group thinks of the emotional side of the issue. Because I think it's important to acknowledge that there are emotions tied up in issues. They shouldn't necessarily be why we make a decision sometimes, but sometimes it is a reason for making that decision. After that, I have students put on their black hat. And the black hat thinking is when you're the devil's advocate. And this is kind of when you consider the implications of your choice. So if we made this particular choice, what would be the negative things that could come from it? What could be the worst case scenario? After our black hat, perhaps we're going to try the white hat, or excuse me, the yellow hat. The yellow hat is positive. It's like sunshine. What can we do, or considering the implications of our decision, what would be the best results? What would be the optimistic outlook or results from our decision making? So there's 6 hats. Oh, finally, the last one, the green hat. The green one is the creative hat, and that's where you think outside the box. So maybe you're having a debate and it's either this way or this way. But maybe you could say, hey guys, let's think outside the box. What are some creative ways we could solve this problem? So the way that you run this activity is that you have the students all think together in their groups at the same time using a specific hat. So let me go back to the Nearpod so you can see what that looks like. I have, let's see, make sure that's on. So here are I'm going to take off my hat now, but here is the 6 hat thinking. As I told you before, the blue hat is the process. And this is, as a teacher, I will be the one that says, okay, everybody, put on your white hat. And all the students put on their white hats, and they're all kind of laughing because you look silly wearing a newspaper hat with a ring on it. But I say, this is when we need to be neutral. This is when we just want facts and statistics. And so if students have, I let students use their phones in my classes. So maybe they'll do a little bit of research, or they'll just come up with facts that are established facts that most people would agree with. And then maybe I'll say, okay, put on your red hats. Let's think about the emotional side of this. What do like women think about this? What do men think about this? Is there a emotional, religious side to this that we might want to consider for a certain decision? Then you could do the black hat, where you think of kind of the devil's advocate, or you think of the dangers or the weaknesses. The yellow hat is where you think about the benefits, and the green hat is creativity. And honestly, you don't have to use all of the hats. Maybe you're just going to do the black, the yellow, and the white. Maybe you're going to leave the red hat out of it. Or maybe you're going to do facts and creativity and benefits. So you decide. You have to organize this yourself for however it works with your students. So the first 2 times that I do this, all of my students have their newspaper hats and their rings. I ask them to keep them in their notebooks, and they bring them back to the next class, and we do another activity with it. And then after that, to me, the beauty of this is that when students are writing maybe a persuasive paper, I'll say, you know what? You've got a lot of red hat thinking in here. And they're like, oh man, I need some more white hat thinking, don't I? So instead of saying emotions and logic, they're using those colors and how we've talked about them to rewrite and rethink the way that they are producing their documents or their projects. So let me show you a website that I use in my class a lot. And this is a place to get debate topics, because I think debate topics are really interesting for students to talk about. And this particular website is for high school students, and they are high school students in the United States. So it may be that some of these are not appropriate for your classes, but there's general debate topics, ones related to education, ones related to school, environmental, political debates, parenting, technology, etc. So I'm just throwing in this website if you wanted to check out some of these topics. For younger students, you can have a more simpler debate. You can say cats are better than dogs. That can be your premise. So it doesn't have to be something, really heavy duty like, I'm trying to find one. So, will robots increase people's quality of life? You don't necessarily have to do something that's super heavy duty. You can use something that's a little bit more user friendly. So just for pretend, let's kind of think about this 6 hats thinking. And I'm giving you the premise: everyone should become a vegetarian by the year 2050. So that is our premise. And I want you to think, are you for or against it? But before you decide, we really need to do some 6 hat thinking. If we had time, we would do that for the next hour. But unfortunately, we don't really have time to explore these ideas. So what I'm going to do instead is have you do a couple of activities in Nearpod. But what I would do, if you were my students, is I would say, okay, I'm wearing the blue hat. I'm going to say, everybody think of 3 logical reasons why everyone should become a vegetarian. And then I want you to be a black hat thinker and think about what are the negatives if everyone becomes a vegetarian. And then maybe I'll say, are there any emotions involved in that? Let's put on our red hats. Are there any emotional issues related to this about forcing everyone to become a vegetarian by the year 2050? Maybe I will say, put on your yellow hat. What would be the benefit if everyone should become a vegetarian? And then finally, is there a compromise? Is there something that we could do to incentivize people to become vegetarians? So I wish we had time to do this right now, to get into breakout rooms, because I'm sure you have great ideas. But this webinar is more about showing you these activities so that you can use them in your own classes, because you all, of course, are brilliant English speakers and you don't need practice in debating. But one reason why I like this activity is that it does guide the discussion. Because if you just tell students, okay, debate it, they're thinking it's not always so organized. So again, these are the hats that we were just talking about. You can do them in any order that you wish. I usually have the teacher, or I am the teacher, wear the organizing hat. But you know, if you have a particularly independent group of students, you could have one person be the organizer, or have the team together figure out how they're going to go through the process. Using the hats, again, blue hats at the beginning and the end, and it's usually worn by the facilitator. You can use any hat as often as needed. You can use them in a sequence, or you can just say, everybody right now, I just want everyone to put on their green hat and think about blah, 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 and not even have it be a formal lesson, but just saying green hat, I think, stimulates people to remember, oh, that's my creative hat. That's when I get to throw out wild ideas. You know, it's not necessary to use every hat. The time under each hat is generally short. I mean, I usually give like 5-7 minutes for each hat. If it gets too long, then students start to get bored. And this is not something I do every class. I do it maybe 2 classes in a row, and then just kind of refer to it in the future. It does require discipline for people to stay focused. It adds an element of play. Even my adults enjoy wearing their newspaper hat and talking about. In fact, when my students leave the class, oftentimes they wear their hats around campus, and it's very funny for me to see. It can be used by individuals and groups. And honestly, I use this with my family. We were talking about a vacation, and we had different ideas of where to go. So we sat around the table, and of course, both of my kids were in high school, and they're like, Mom. But we ended up having fun, and I think we ended up making a good decision, which was to visit my sister. Okay. What I like about debates, what I like about group work, is that it gives students an time to use functional language. So, you know, I have this up on posters around my room when they're taking turns, and I'm trying to build teamwork within my classes, because that is another of those 21st century skills, is the ability to work together well with others. So I do like to remind them of these functional languages, examples that they can use when they are discussing the topic in their groups. So I thought we would go ahead and just kind of see how much of this makes sense to you. There's another game that I wanted to show you here in Nearpod. And basically, this is just a multiple choice game. And I have 6 questions that are related to 6 hat thinking. And what you need to do if you are in Nearpod is that you need to select a character. So let me go ahead and show you what that looks like for the people who are not in Nearpod. So I'm going to change to the student view for a moment here. And you can choose 3 different situations. I think there's one in space, and there's one underwater, and maybe there's one in the woods. This button over here on the right, this little arrow, it gives you more characters to choose from, and it plays kind of jazzy music. So maybe I'm gonna in here. Okay. And then after you choose your character, it's going to ask you to. We'll see how many people have chosen their characters. It always takes a second. So you see how we have all these people here, and I can show their names. I had them all hidden, but we can show their names here. So you could, whoops, I accidentally hit him. There we go. So we can see some of the names there. And I didn't show you that extra arrow that if you click on that, it gives you a whole lot more of different characters. So I think people were just looking at the first screen. But again, you can, I'm going to go ahead and start the game. So what happens here is that I'm going to start it and you're going to get 6 questions. And the way that you win the game is by answering them accurately and answering them quickly. So you have 1 minute for your answer. So we have 28 people. I'm going to wait just 1 more minute because there should be approximately 40 people there. So we'll see if a few more people join. You can't join the game late. So if you're a few minutes late, you won't be able to join the game. But I'm going to switch to the student view so that all of you who are not in Nearpod can see it too. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. We got 31 people. We'll start the game. So I'm going to start it and I will come over here to the student view so that those of you who are not in Nearpod can play at home. So what you're going to do, you're going to have a question and then you're going to have 3 answers and you have 1 minute to make up your mind. So it takes a second to load to switch between the views. So we won't have a full minute for our first one. Oh, it's making me pick a character. Okay. So it's already started, so I only have about 21 seconds here. Oh, I got there too late. So, but that's okay. The people who are playing this should have had a chance to. The question is, what is an example of some blue hat thinking? And the correct answer, if you take a guess, it will turn green, and if it's wrong, it will turn red. And because I was late, the correct answer was we need to use all hats to complete this activity. So that's an example of blue hat thinking. Now I think we can all play this second. It says, what is an example of red hat emotional thinking? So looking at these 3 statements, for those of you not in Nearpod, try to figure out if it's the blue one, the yellow one, or the purple one. And I did this for a minute. You can do it longer. You can do it for 2 minutes or 3 minutes or 30 seconds. Again, the point of this is just to kind of give you a taste of this. So what's an example of red? Vegetarian is maybe the prevalent, there oops, the maybe, I'm sorry, there maybe, and honestly, I think the best answer here is saying that it's boring, because that's going to make it emotional. So if you get it right, it will say nice job, and if you didn't, it will say darn. So again, we have question number 3. Those of you who are home, you can see, or those of you not in Nearpod, you can see. Everyone in the group needs to write down 3 reasons for and 3 reasons against vegetarianism. That's blue hat thinking. That's process thinking. That is not the right answer. But if I select it, it will say, oh, it's going to wait for our answer. I have to wait for everything. Ah, snap. is the best behavior? That's logical thinking. Okay, we have 3 more. This one says, what's an example of yellow hat benefit thinking, but of optimistic thinking? Please don't choose Americans will go crazy if we can't eat hamburgers. So maybe a benefit of having everybody be a vegetarian would be, I'll wait to not give it away to those people who are in the So a benefit, it would eliminate life, lower soil erosion. Oops, I was too slow to answer. Oh no, I did. There we go. Correct answer. Black hat is devil's advocate for thinking about negative results from making everybody be a vegetarian. Loving this music. I think if that would be the correct answer. People are mandated to think they're made of that would be a negative thing if having a okay, we've got 1 question left, guys. So the premise says everybody needs to be a vegetarian. We can see that yellow answer is really more of a hat thinking, it's more of a preference or negative interpretation of giving the meat to vegetarian. This one is a positive thing. If we didn't have all of these animals generating greenhouse gases, correct answer. Okay, so that is it. Let me go back to, I think it's going to give us, here we have yours. Woo! Excellent, excellent. So again, congratulations to our winners. Okay, just to let you know, the 6-hat thinking has been around since the 1970s, and there are huge organizations that use this technique for critical thinking, including NASA, Microsoft, British Airways, PepsiCo, DuPont. So it's kind of exciting that you can use this as well. Going back to that wheel, remember that wheel that we looked at a while ago? This is a way for you to kind of think about that wheel in reference to what we just did. So, you know, critical thinking can come from many different directions, and this is another way of thinking about it. if we were using the idea of vegetarianism, of thinking about the purpose, the question, the information, the interpretation and inference. So if the six hat thinking didn't do it for you, this is another way of thinking about critical thinking. And so I kind of threw this in the Nearpod for you to look at more closely when you access the Nearpod by yourself. So these are, again, some questions that I took from that wheel to frame this debate for my students. And I just did it to show you that there's many ways to frame or to create a critical thinking activity. Some of you might be going, Amy, hello, this is too advanced for my students. I understand that. So what I wanted to do was to show you an activity for younger students. And granted, I do not teach younger students, but I've done some research about websites that are helpful for critical thinking and teaching critical thinking to younger students. And what I've learned is that students of all ages can always predict what will happen next. They can figure out causes and effects. They can hypothesize. In fact, when children hypothesize, it cracks me up. If you ask them, you know, why do you think water comes out of the faucet when you turn it on? You know, little kids, as a mother of 2 kids, some of the answers they would give me, I just thought were so incredibly creative and funny. So I do think younger students can infer or hypothesize. Compare and contrast. Students do this all the time when they're matching things or they're looking at similarities and differences and articulating those in the classroom. And then finally evaluating, is this a good idea or a bad idea? So I wanted to share one more activity with you where we could use some of these higher level critical thinking skills: predicting, establishing cause and effect, inferring, hypothesizing, comparing, contrasting, and evaluating. So there's one more activity that I wanted to share for you. And oops, I got to switch to the teacher view. This is a website that I found. It's actually from Canada. And it is a bunch of very simple songs. And they have words that you can see above them. So you can play the song and then you can play the song without the words. So to me, it's very, very cool. So this is the same thing that we did before where we answered questions. So let's give this a try.
Five little monkeys jumping on the bed.
So this is a prediction question, guys. What do you think will happen to the 5 little monkeys jumping on the bed? And again, this is kind of a complex question, but as a teacher, you know, what happens next? What happens to the monkeys? And this is a chance for you to take a guess. What do you think is going to happen to those little monkeys jumping on the bed? And let's see if we've got some participation. One of them will fall down. Yes, one falls down. Yes, fall off the bed. Okay, I think we got that. Let's continue. Good answers.
One fell off and bumped his head. Mama called the doctor and the doctor said,
no more monkeys jumping on the bed.
Four little monkeys jumping on the bed. One fell off and bumped his head.
So here's a cause and effect question. What happened to the 4th little monkey when he fell off the bed? And here you could talk, what caused him to bump his head? He fell off the bed, right? He bumped his head on the floor. Such brilliance in this webinar tonight. Okay, and again, I apologize for those of you who teach high school students or even college students. I know this is a very simple song, but I love music and I love bringing it into the classroom. So we will just 2 more minutes.
Mama called the doctor and the doctor said,
No more monkeys jumping on the bed.
3 little monkeys jumping on the bed. One fell off and bumped her head. Mama called the doctor and the doctor said,
No more monkeys jumping.
So why are there 3 little monkeys sitting on the bed? What do you think they're doing there? Do you think they've learned their lesson? Do you think they're going to stay on the bed? We'll see if we have any answers here. They're playing, absolutely. That's what they're doing on the bed. Because it's funny. The other 2 fell down, exactly. That's what happened to the other 2. There were 5, now there's 3. Good. Okay, and again, I'm sorry that I'm speeding through this, but I just wanted to give you a taste of what this is.
Jumping on the bed.
2 little monkeys jumping on the bed. One fell off and bumped his head. Mama called the doctor and the doctor said,
No more monkeys jumping on the bed.
1 little monkey jumping on the bed. She fell off and bumped her head. Mama called the doctor and the doctor said,
No more monkeys jumping on the bed.
So this one you would actually need to show the picture for, but how are the 5 monkeys similar and how are they different? And if you may have to have another picture of this to actually show the students to remind them. But off the top of your head, did anybody see, are the 5 monkeys identical or are there similarities and differences there? And it might be better to, you could say they were all brown, they were all small. So those are some similarities. There is one major difference. I don't know if you were listening to the pronoun references. They were all jumping on the bed. There's a similarity. But you could play it again and show your students that some of the monkeys are girls and some of the monkeys are boys. So that is a difference. They have different, they all fell down, but at a different time. Exactly, exactly. Okay, let's wrap this up here. What I wanted to show you in this video is that it continues on. Well, let's go ahead and answer this question first. Do you think it's a good idea to jump on the bed? Why or why not? So this is evaluating. And again, some students will say, yes, it's fun, or no, you could get hurt. So again, you don't necessarily have to answer this question. I was just trying to show you that you can use critical thinking skills with younger students, and you perhaps don't even know you're doing it. And the students certainly don't know they're doing it. So we shouldn't. No, we can get hurt. Yes, it's fun. It's fun. It's not a good idea because it's dangerous, right? And the doctor may call and say no more monkeys jumping on the bed. But what I want to show you about this video
now you read,
is that they play the song again, and this time you add and I would plead for you that you all run away. I'm a terrible singer. Right. Okay, so I think this is kind of a neat, stop it and skip ahead. This is the website, and for those of you who do not have younger students, you have middle school or high school or even college, you may still be parents. And I think this super simple website is really neat. It has lots of printables, including the song lyrics. It has teaching ideas on it that you can watch and use in your own classroom. There are craft ideas. I loved crafts when I was a kid, and I think a lot of crafts are a good way to teach English for following directions and for producing something and asking questions and sequencing ideas. So crafts, I think, are a great way, as well as activities. So I hope you have a chance to explore this website. Okay, my friends, one more website that I want to show you before we jump into our teacher website. This is 10 great critical thinking activities that engage your students. And this is listed. This is something that you can explore when you go to the Nearpod on your own, when you do the self-paced version. So again, I won't read these to you. I don't want to insult your intelligence, but I would encourage you to come in here and look at these. I think they're terrific, and I certainly plan on stealing some of those myself. Okay, let's sum up this kind of critical thinking that we've been doing here before we move on to the activities that I'm hoping that you will participate in. To sum up, we should teach critical thinking skills. We want our students to succeed in the 21st century. We want them to be reasonable, logical problem solvers. Personally, I'm going to be retiring in several years, so I want the next generation to make the world a better place. So I hope that they are learning these critical thinking skills. We should explore the elemental purposes for thinking when we create thinking activities. I think going back to those 5 tips for critical thinking and that wheel of reason is really a good way to kind of refresh your memory about what critical thinking skills are and how you might design activities in your classes to use those skills. And personally, I think we should incorporate critical thinking skills into all of our lessons. I know at the poll at the beginning, not everybody said they did do that, but maybe after seeing this webinar, you're thinking, yeah, I actually do critical thinking skills. Maybe not in an elaborate way or a super focused way, but I bet that you are teaching critical thinking skills indirectly oftentimes. So Pooh Bear, my hero, my literary hero, and his little friend Piglet, at one point, Pooh is talking about thinking and says, you know, when you're thinking, you need to think it over and you need to think it under. And I would like to add, you need to think it around, and you need to think it above, and you need to think it below. That critical thinking is really complex. And I think the more you think about it and the more points of view and implications that you consider and examining your own biases and stereotypes, that the better you'll be. So back to hats. Oh, excuse me. Here are all the different resources that we use. And I want to just tell you that my hat is off to you. I think you are all doing a terrific job in this class so far and in these webinars. I appreciate your attention. As we know, taking your hat off is an indication that you respect somebody. And I certainly respect the work that you're putting into these activities, and I look forward to hearing more from you in the Tech for Teaching. So let me go ahead and jump into that website. Let me stop that and go into our website. And let's see. Ooh, perhaps I was in the right place after all. Sorry about that. Here we go. I hope you can all see this. This is the webinar. This is the Tech for Teaching website. And we have the webinar 1, the webinar 2, and the webinar 3. If you haven't contributed to the discussions, please, you still have a chance to do that. The directions for each one are at the top. So if you click on it, it says, "Greeting everyone. In this discussion forum, please complete the following tasks. Post a 6-word memoir, post 3 photos that reflect what's important to your life, and write 2 to 3 sentences about your teaching environment." I promise you, I will write you back. I'm very interested in your thoughts and your ideas. I encourage you to respond to each other, because I'm hoping that after these 6 webinars, you will have met some people that you can possibly reach out to in the future when you need encouragement, or when you need ideas, or if you have a great idea that you can share with your colleagues. So this is really not about me. This is about you all trying to forge connections and get together and exchange ideas. So if I go back to the webinars, you will see for that webinar 1, as I talked about in the beginning, that there are some supplementary resources that you can look at. There is that lesson, the 4 skills lesson plan group assignment, and there's the recording of the webinar if you wanted to watch it again. For our vocabulary and grammar lessons that we did last week, there is a webinar quiz, and you can take it 2 times. So you can review the PowerPoint again. If you click on the supplementary resources, you will see all of these resources here that you can open up. If you want to review the PowerPoint before you take the quiz, I would encourage you to do that. Let's also look at the Mad Libs teaching ideas. This was another discussion, and it says in the Teaching Mad Libs in the Classroom Curriculum Guide, there are 28 suggested activities. What I would like you to do is to take a peek. So just take a quick look. You don't have to read the whole thing, and select 1 or 2 activities that you would like to try in the classroom. Let us know in a short paragraph why you think it would be successful and how you would implement it in the classroom. Discuss any potential challenges with implementing the activity and potential solutions. So if I click on this baby, I'm hoping it's going to open up. This is that 28, oh, why did I say, oh, there's 28, there's 12 pages, excuse me. And I'm just gonna skip by. So do you see, like, here's 3 ideas for teaching nouns. Here's 3 ideas for teaching verbs. 4 ideas or activities for teaching adjectives. So I'm asking you to just look at these 12 pages and choose 1 and see if you, or think about, speculate, if you could use it in your classroom. And in fact, several of you have already done that. You have used these in your classes, and you've told us about it in the discussion. So I appreciate that. I'm going to go back into our webinars so that I can show you the webinar 3 activities. I'm going to open up the assignment for webinar number 3. And there are, it's a Word document. And let me actually go to that Word document here. Hold on a second. This is the document that you'll see, and it says, please complete the following tasks before June 20th. It says, review the resources on TED Ed. Try the lesson that was already developed in the website for the critical thinking video that we watched. So if you click on this link here, and this is where you're going to find the activities on this assignment sheet. If you click on this, it's going to take you to this lesson that was created. There's the same video that we already watched, and then it's going to give you questions over here. So these questions I did not create. These questions were created by somebody else, but I am permitted to use them, and so are you. So I wanted you just to try this to see how easy it is to use, and possibly you could sign up for this, register for this, and use it yourself. Okay, let me see if I can go back to my document. I'm not sure that you saw that, but if you click on the link, it's going to take you to TED Ed, and you will see it there. Let me go back to our assignment sheet. And the second thing is to explore Nearpod, and that was the software that I used for tonight's webinar. There's a 3-minute video that gives you the basics of how to create a lesson. So all I want you to do is just watch it. You don't have to create a lesson. I just want you to watch it and see how easy it is. Next, you should review the Nearpod that we did tonight. And the reason I'm asking you to review it is that not everybody got to experience it. So I thought if you reviewed it, then you would be able to see what it's like and to see whether or not you think it would be appropriate for your students. So again, you don't need to make a Nearpod. All you need to do is watch or participate in the one we did tonight. And this is the code. So you can do this at any time for the next 4 weeks. And also I'd like to have you click on this link and watch the lesson in Nearpod. The third thing to do is that we have that Wheel of Reason. I want you just to spend a few moments looking at that. Again, you don't need to produce anything. I just want you to have that experience of, taking 15, 20 minutes, clicking on the different elements, the 8 different elements of thinking, so that you can experience that at your leisure. Because I know I'm talking very quickly tonight. So I hope you have a chance to look at that. Finally, our last thing is that there is this terrific book on the American English website, and it's called The Monster Book of Activities. And it has over 150 activities that you can review at your classroom. Again, you don't need to read the whole thing. Just look at the table of contents. There's a whole section on teaching critical thinking skills. There's a whole section on teaching grammar skills. So I'm hoping that you just can look at this resource and get inspired maybe to try some of these activities in your classroom. So after you've done these 4 things, remember, you're going to look at the TED Ed lesson on TED Ed. You're going to look at Nearpod. You're going to look at the elements of thinking, and you're going to look at the monster book. Then fill out the questionnaire in Moodle or in the Tech for Teaching. So let me show you what that looks like. Da-da-da-da-da-da. I hope I didn't close it. And this critical thinking questionnaire, when you click on that, it's just, it says I'm not eligible because I created it. But all it is it says, I looked at TED Ed, and you check either yes or no. And then it says, I opened up the monster book, yes or no. So this is not a quiz. It's not a task. It's just a validation that you did those 4 things so that you get credit for participating in the webinar in the post activities. Okay, my friends, we have approximately 15 minutes, I think, to answer any questions that you may have. So I'm going to stop the share. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me go back to the PowerPoint. We started off in the PowerPoint. We'll end in the PowerPoint. Back. Whoops. I messed that one up. It's not actually important. The PowerPoint I put into the Tech for Teaching, but I put in an extended PowerPoint that has copies of the Nearpod screenshots. So if you don't get to see the Nearpod in the next 3 or 4 weeks, you can see those games and activities in the PowerPoint. Remember, the PowerPoints that I post, you are welcome to download and change around and use for your own professional development if you want to share them with your colleagues. And I'm more than happy for you to do that. So please feel free to do that. It looks like we have some messages in our chat, and I will see. Okay, some people had to leave. Okay, yes, Kahoot. I love Kahoot. I'm glad to see somebody brought that up. Thank you. Okay, well, what's nice comments in the chat? Thank you very much. Do you have any questions for me? Please feel free to unmute yourself. Is it clear what you're supposed to be doing for the next 4 weeks? Okay, could I ask all of you to can you turn on your cameras? I'm going to see if I can make this bigger so I can see everybody. Let's see, I'm going to do my, okay, thank you guys. I appreciate your attention. I will send this back to Seimeo if you have any closing comments. And I will look forward to seeing you in 4 weeks where we'll be talking about technology. And I'll share some more technology tips for you. Please feel free to message me in Tech for Teaching. I love getting messages. And I hope that you can contribute to the discussions. And somebody's wearing a hat off. Where did your hat off? Cute. Excellent. Okay, Seimeo, do you have anything else that you wanted to say before we close?
Yeah, thank you very much, Ami. Thank you for a wonderful webinar. The good thing about the webinar is that we not only learn about teaching methodology, but we also learn some updated, some new tools and application for our teaching. We hope that the participants can make use of the tools and application to improve their lessons and make the lessons more attractive to the students. The next webinars will be on June the 22nd with the topic Trusted Technology Tips for Top-Notch Teaching, which is, I hope that this is a very interesting topic about using technology in our teaching. Today, there is 70 participants joining the Zoom live webinar. The different thing about this webinar is that we try to limit the number of participants. However, it's a pity that some participants missed the live webinar. We try to limit the number of participants because we encourage the engagement and the interaction between the instructor and the participants. So I hope that you can arrange your time to join the live webinar. However, if for a certain reason that you miss any webinar, you can watch the recorded video and you can share the YouTube link with your colleagues and friends. While waiting for the next webinar, remember to join the discussion and do the assignments that Ami just mentioned in the Tech for Teach platform. So I think that's it for today's webinar. Thank you very much for your active participation. Thank you very much, Ami, for your well preparation for the webinar today. See you again on June the 22nd. Thank you very much and bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.